It was supposed to be a silent summit, the kind where beings who hadn't even agreed on what constituted existence came together, smiled through far too many teeth or orifices, and politely threatened one another with annihilation while sipping recombinant tea. The Hall of the Alithia Primaris, a ship so large it required its own gravitational legislature, was lined with floating podiums, environmental spheres, and ambient tension thick enough to grill. Ambassador Gregory Blaine was seated, or rather semi-collapsed, in C at H-42, which was diplomatically designated for observation-only species with low galactic influence and negligible telepathic bandwidth. His chair occasionally hissed when he shifted, which he later discovered was due to a cushioning feature designed for the spiny inhabitants of cruel Mox 3. He had a bruise on his lower back in the shape of a trilobe gland and a small translation earpiece blinking politely in his left ear. It hadn't had to translate anything yet, because no one was speaking to him. The hall was a marvel, 1,000 feet of shimmering bioglass, kinetic chandelier drones flitting overhead, and each attending species seated in climate-specific pods or levitating thrones. Dignitaries from the Varnath hegemony buzzed in infra-ultrasonic range. The Trispecians communicated through synchronized nose flares. A gelatinous being known only as Ambassador Splurg vibrated gently in a nutrient cube, occasionally flashing symbols against its gelatin with surprising sarcasm. Then she arrived. There was no announcement, no horn, fanfare, or even polite bell. Just a hush that rolled through the summit like a thought everyone tried to suppress at once. The side doors opened, and in walked a woman, tall, robed in what looked like condensed dusk, hair like silver fluid coiled behind her shoulders. Her ears curved upward, elongated and delicately ridged, giving her an appearance somewhere between myth and math. She held a child in her arms, an infant, a baby, in the galactic Concord summit. It was the kind of diplomatic faux pas that usually ended in planetary sieges, or at least strongly worded memos. She walked unbothered, her bare feet making no sound on the luminous floor. No species recognized her by face, crest, or neural sense signature. Even the auto-identification systems briefly flashed 404, species not found, then tried to charge Gregory's credit implant for the error. She moved toward the center dais, vacant, holy, and coated in 37 layers of bureaucratic red tape, and stood. Then the baby cried. At first it was a soft sound, a hiccup of discomfort, but then it built, spiraling, pitch-shifting, reverberating in ways that physics had yet to describe, but already feared. Delegates flinched. Ambassador Splurg liquefied into a puddle of nervous goo. One of the Trispecians' noses inverted. The cry grew louder, not in volume, but in presence. It folded through dimensions. It triggered ancient memories in races that had long since abandoned childhood. Weapon systems flickered on unintentionally. The chandelier drones froze, uncertain of protocol. The hall filled with an emotional frequency that no one could tolerate. No one but the woman and the baby. The silence that followed was not relief. It was anticipation. A Zerlachian priest floated forward first, offering a sacred mucus sphere of calming pheromones. The baby screamed louder. An insectoid healer from the Diplomatic Health Consortium deployed a lullaby emitter tuned to 27 hertz, the frequency of maternal comfort in 75 systems. The emitter promptly exploded. The Varnath delegation offered a legally binding nap treaty. Nothing worked. Gregory, meanwhile, had slowly sunk so far into his chair that he was almost parallel to the floor, hoping that going limp would render him invisible. It did not, because in a moment that would later be uploaded, translated, and remixed into thousands of holomemes, the woman's glowing eyes scanned the room and then locked directly on him. She moved toward him. Gregory considered sprinting. He also considered dying of embarrassment on the spot. But he stood, not because of courage or duty or a noble sense of peacekeeping, but because his chair chose that exact moment to eject him forward with a pneumatic hiss and a friendly chirp. Everyone stared as he stumbled across the floor. "Hello," he said, then remembering galactic protocol added, "esteemed being of indeterminate origin." The woman didn't reply. She simply extended the child toward him. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an offer. It was a moment. Gregory hesitated. His hands shook. He had not held a baby since his niece drooled into his suit pocket at a family wedding that ended in fire. He reached out, and the crying stopped. The baby looked up at him, lavender eyes wide, blinking slowly, cheeks puffed like tiny solar moons, and smiled. A sound like stardust on a drum floated out of her mouth, the coo of contentment. No one breathed, even the species that didn't have lungs. Gregory smiled awkwardly, cradling the child like she was a living bomb made of feathers. "Hi there," he whispered. "Did we break physics together?" The baby giggled. The sound rippled through the room, triggering spontaneous feelings of mild euphoria and maternal nostalgia. One ambassador wept openly, another clapped without realizing it. "Okay," Gregory said, turning to the silent, stunned hall. "I guess, she likes humans?" No one answered. The woman finally spoke, her voice lilting, with an accent that didn't match any linguistic database. "She remembers you." Gregory blinked. "What? She chose you." "I'm not even on the main guest list," he said. "Neither is she," the woman said softly. "And yet, here we are." Then she turned and walked away, leaving the summit's central floor, the podium of unity, and a room full of the galaxy's most powerful entities staring at a human holding a glowing alien baby, both of them smiling as if they had just pulled off the greatest prank in diplomatic history. Gregory's earpiece crackled, finally translating something. It whispered, "Well, now you've done it." Gregory had never been the center of galactic attention before. He was more of a peripheral figure, a man you vaguely remembered seeing in line for synthetic muffins at interstellar conferences, the kind of diplomat whose job was mostly to smile, nod, and never touch anything glowing. But now he stood on the central platform of the Alethea Primaris, holding a quietly giggling alien baby, like he was auditioning for the strangest sitcom in the universe. The silence stretched long enough for the chandelier drones to resume their hovering. Then came the blinking. Dozens of dignitaries blinked in various biological and non-biological ways, flashing carapaces, vibrating cilia, glimmering eye stalks. Even the diplomatic fungus cluster emitted a confused puff of spores. The universe seemed unsure whether to cheer, scream, or take notes. The baby, Solari, he would learn her name later, reached up and patted Gregory's chin. It was a gentle tap that released a small pulse of energy, like a ripple of warm static. Somewhere in the crowd, a Trespecian delegate gasped and fainted, murmuring something about empathic purity thresholds. Gregory cleared his throat. "Well, she seems calm now. That's good, right?" No one answered. They were still processing the anomaly, that a human, an earthborn, nap-loving, emotionally volatile species, had succeeded where technology, telepathy, and mucus had failed. He spotted the alien woman standing a few meters away, observing him with a faint smirk, as if she knew exactly how uncomfortable he was and had decided not to interfere for sport. Her long ears twitched slightly, and Gregory wondered if that was laughter, or maybe radar. Then the questions began. They started as murmurs. Then came the reporters, their hovering drones blinking with indecent curiosity. A small flock of Glintavian truth-seers swooped down, shouting questions that sounded like riddles in minor key jazz. A tentacled interviewer attempted to extract Gregory's emotional memory, using a neural tap before security swatted it away with a beam of polite outrage. "Mr. Blaine," a voice called, "what species is the child? Is this part of a political alliance? Does this mean humans have unlocked empathic bonding? Would you say you're more of a nurturing father figure or a walking comfort generator?" Gregory opened his mouth to respond, realized he didn't know the answer to any of that, and instead offered, "I once kept a houseplant alive for 3 months. I think that qualifies me for this." Somewhere, a diplomatic botanist applauded. Security finally intervened. The summit's head of containment, an overclocked AI named Capri 7, beamed Gregory, the baby, and the mysterious woman into a secured chamber without asking for consent. Gregory stumbled mid-teleport and landed on a plush, diplomatic cushion shaped like a dodecahedron. The baby laughed again. "Right," Gregory said, brushing himself off. "This is going great." The woman stepped forward and sat gracefully on the other side of the room. She lowered her hood, revealing features that were both serene and unsettling, like someone who understood the shape of your thoughts before you did. Her silver hair floated slightly as if underwater. "I'm Erath," she said. "Gregory Blaine," he replied, shifting the baby slightly to his left arm. "Junior Earth Liaison. I mostly do greetings and pastries. Sometimes I press buttons." She tilted her head. "Solari chose you. That is not usual." "Right, yes, the being chosen by an alien infant bit. That's new for me too." "She is sensitive," Erath said. "Her emotional field operates on layered quantum frequencies. She can feel intention more than language. Sound alone doesn't calm her, nor visuals, only resonance." "So I'm what? Sonically agreeable? Possibly, or simply bland enough to not threaten her nervous system." Gregory frowned. "Thank you, I guess." "She reacts to you as if you're familiar, like an echo from before she was born." He blinked. "Okay, that's not ominous." Aretha rose and approached slowly. "She's a hybrid, one parent of my lineage. The other was not." Gregory nodded. "I'm going to take a wild guess and say the other wasn't human either." "No," she said. "He was a being of political significance, one who believed emotion was weakness. He saw her as a threat. I fled before she was born." The child nestled into Gregory's chest and sighed contentedly. "I had hoped," Eratha continued, "that in this hall with so many minds present, she would bond with one, a diplomat, a healer, a mind-attuned psychic. But she chose a man with coffee breath and a wrinkled lapel." "I'm honored," Gregory said, and slightly offended. Suddenly, Capri Seven's disembodied voice filled the chamber. "Due to widespread transmission and public reaction, Subject Blaine is now trending in 7 galactic systems under the tag number Empathy Daddy. Shall I suppress or monetize?" "Suppress," Erath said quickly. "Monetize," Gregory muttered, before thinking better of it. A knock echoed, odd considering there were no doors. A panel shimmered, revealing a nervous-looking Glernian aide holding a platter of refreshments, including a stressberry gelatin cube and what might have once been bread. The baby squealed and reached toward it. Gregory held the cube out. It vibrated, then exploded. "Okay," Gregory said, wiping goo off his face. "No gelatin." "Noted." Eratha smiled, a small, real smile. Gregory stared at her. "So, what now?" "She's bonded with you," Eratha said. "That makes you part of a political situation larger than this ship. There are those who will want to take her, study her, control what she represents." "Right," Gregory said. "Of course, because nothing says day job like protecting a psionic baby from interstellar baby nappers." "You have a choice," she said, suddenly serious. "You can walk away. You'll be escorted off the ship. No one will blame you." Gregory looked down at Solari, who was now chewing gently on the edge of his badge. He sighed. "I suppose I could walk away, but she might cry again. And frankly, I think that would cause the heat death of the universe." Eratha said nothing. Gregory looked up. "Besides, I think she likes me, or at least finds me tolerable. That's more than I get from most adults." "She trusts you," Eratha said. "I guess I'll have to be worthy of that then." The baby burped. A small rainbow shimmered in the air. Gregory blinked. "Okay, that's new." Eratha nodded solemnly. "That one means approval." Gregory grinned. "Good to know. But if she ever emits lasers from her eyes, I'm going to need hazard pay." Behind the mirrored walls, someone was watching. Plans were already being made. The next morning, though morning was more a bureaucratic designation aboard the Alithia Primaris, where time was tracked by committee, Gregory Blaine awoke to a soft humming, a baby foot lodged against his temple, and the faint but unmistakable smell of burnt starch. He blinked. Solari was fast asleep on his chest, her lavender eyes closed, emitting occasional squeaks that resonated faintly with the nearby light fixtures. They flickered in time with her dreams. He had fallen asleep in the guest diplomatic quarters, a space designed for beings who excreted through their foreheads and appreciated furniture shaped like Mobius strips. The bed had tried to adjust to his anatomy and given up halfway, resulting in something between a hammock and a gentle interrogation chair. Erath sat in a meditative posture on the floor, eyes half-lidded, ears subtly twitching, as though she were scanning for gravitational anomalies in the carpeting. Gregory groaned. "Does anyone ever sleep in a normal bed in space?" Eratha replied without opening her eyes. "Normal is a local illusion." "Great," he muttered. "Next you'll tell me dreams are subjective probability waves." "They are." He sat up, careful not to wake Solari, who yawned, releasing a tiny pulse of iridescent mist. The mist curled in the air and formed a small duck before vanishing. He chose not to comment. CAPRI-7's voice chimed in. "Greetings, parent adjacent Gregory. You are scheduled for debriefing at 0700 Galactic Harmonization Time. A personal grooming drone has been dispatched. Please remain stationary." A small orb the size of a grapefruit buzzed into the room and immediately began emitting jets of lemon-scented vapor. Gregory waved it away. "No offense, but I think I'll risk manual grooming." The drone emitted a disappointed beep and hovered sulkily near the air duct. Eratha stood gracefully. "Today they will test you. Emotionally, intellectually, or by shooting at me." "Yes." Gregory sighed and gently passed Solari to her. The child whimpered, a low sonic pulse that rattled his teeth. Erathi soothed her with a rhythmic hum that probably doubled as quantum encryption. They stepped into the corridor, where two diplomatic escorts awaited, one a crystalline being named Cheyenne, who spoke only in color shifts, the other a humanoid with 4 arms and a bureaucratic scowl that could peel paint. The walk to the debrief chamber took precisely 9 minutes and was accompanied by a hovering media barrier designed to deter paparazzi and the occasional dimension-phasing stalker. The chamber itself resembled a courtroom, if the courtroom had been designed by a nervous AI obsessed with circles. Delegates sat in concentric rings, each surrounded by tailored environmental fields. The air was laced with ozone, tension, and the faint aroma of fried xanthrut. Gregory stepped into the center, trying to ignore the fact that several of the species present had no discernible eyes and yet were clearly watching him. The Grand Conclave chair, a being known as Modrinth the Subtle, who stood 3 meters tall and wore a robe made of live moths, spoke first. "Human Gregory Blaine, you are now officially designated as primary emotional resonance anchor for the hybrid child Solari. Do you accept this designation?" Gregory cleared his throat. I suppose I do. I wasn't aware that was an official thing." "It is now," Modrin said. "Unanimous vote, with 2 abstentions and 1 ambassador still undergoing emotional recovery." A small cheer erupted from the fungal delegation, who emitted celebratory spores that were immediately vacuumed by protocol drones. Another delegate, composed entirely of light and wearing glasses for irony, leaned forward. "We must determine why this child has bonded to a human, more specifically, to you." Gregory gave a weak smile. "Believe me, I'm wondering the same thing. I wasn't exactly the top pick for Intergalactic Father of the Year." The chamber buzzed. One ambassador muttered, "What is father?" A brief holoscreen played a human sitcom clip involving a man grilling sausages and making dad jokes. A dozen delegates gasped. One fainted. "Moving on," Modrin said. "Are you aware of the political implications of this bond? I suspect they're somewhere between mildly controversial and galactic incident." "Accurate," the AI recorder confirmed. The light-being delegate spoke again. "Some factions consider the child a unifying symbol. Others believe she is a weapon. The fact that her emotional resonance has chosen a human complicates long-held species hierarchies. The stability accord is at risk." "Because she smiled at me?" "Because she stopped screaming," Erath said softly, "and the galaxy listens more closely to silence than to sound." A murmur rippled through the room. Capri-7 projected graphs showing emotional coherence metrics, conflict diffusion patterns, and a dramatic spike in search engine queries for, "Can humans pacify hybrid babies?" Gregory tried to process this while watching Solari chew on a corner of Erath's robe. Modrinth leaned forward. "There are factions who will not allow this bond to continue. They will demand testing, separation, even containment." Gregory stepped forward. "Then we say no. I won't let them take her." You speak as if you have authority, Mudrin said. I don't, but I do have a lap, and apparently that's enough for Solari. CAPRI-7 processed this statement. New category logged, lap-based authority, updating diplomatic index. Laughter, hesitant, then growing, spread through the chamber. Even Modrinth's mothrobe fluttered with what might have been amusement. The crystalline escort pulsed in calming hues. Aretha gave Gregory a rare smile. But just as the room began to relax, the chamber lights flickered. Capri 7's voice dropped into alert mode. Unauthorized breach detected. External transport signature entering local space. Encryption matches Obscura protocol. Alert. Shadow faction presence confirmed. Gregory turned. Shadow faction? Arath's expression darkened. They seek to control her or destroy her, whichever is easier. The baby giggled and began levitating an inch above her mother's arm, glowing faintly. Gregory rubbed his temples. Can I just say, for the record, I was not trained for this? Modrin's robe shifted nervously. You'll have to learn quickly, because they are coming. Gregory learned 3 things very quickly. First, the Shadow faction didn't knock. Second, the security team on the Alithia Primaris was excellent at polite diplomacy, but had not been designed to repel stealth phase operatives with phase-weaving cloaks and emotionally nullified neural cores. Third, holding a psionically sensitive baby while being pursued by rogue assassins from an anti-empathy splinter group was bad for digestion. This is not how I pictured my day, Gregory muttered, ducking behind a corridor pillar that smelled faintly of citrus in despair. Aratha pressed her back against the opposite wall, one hand raised in a defensive gesture, the other holding Solari. The baby gurgled peacefully, utterly unbothered by the fact that cloaked figures were flickering in and out of visibility a few hallways over, searching for them with scanners shaped like angry dragonflies. They're not trying to kill us, Aratha whispered, her ears twitching in tight concentric pulses. Oh, good, Gregory said. Maybe they just want to invite us to a dance. They want to take Solari. They'll use containment fields calibrated to disrupt empathic bonds. I don't like that sentence. I'd like fewer of those sentences in my life. Aratha glanced toward a service vent. We'll go through the maintenance tunnels. You know, Gregory said, there was a time I worked in an embassy with functioning elevators and a coffee machine that didn't grow mold intelligence. Do you want to reminisce or survive? Can I do both if I run fast enough? They slipped into the tunnel, narrow, dimly lit, and filled with a faint humming that seemed to follow no logical rhythm. Solari began to hum back, creating harmonics that caused the lights to blink in Morse code-like patterns. Gregory was fairly sure the baby was winning at ambient communication. The path twisted through internal circulatory systems designed for maintenance drones and gliding nutrient lines. At one point, Gregory was fairly certain they passed a sentient air filter praying to a carbon god. No one commented. So, he whispered, climbing over a pipe labeled, "Do not whisper near this pipe." What exactly does the Shadow faction want with Solari? Are they anti-baby? Anti-resonance? They believe emotional frequency is a vulnerability, Arath said. That shared feeling is chaos. They want order without empathy, prediction without connection. To them, Solari is dangerous because she cannot be controlled. Gregory paused. She's a giggling infant. She also realigned my neuroempathic pathways last night while sneezing. Ah, right. They emerge in a storage bay filled with hover crates, surplus ceremonial robes, and a vending machine offering nutritional cubes, taste optional. Gregory leaned against it. This whole thing's gotten out of hand, he said. 2 days ago, my biggest worry was whether I'd left my datapad charger on Earth. Arathi handed Solari to him. You still can walk away. No, I can't, he said without thinking. She studied him. Because of duty? Because of her, he replied, bouncing Solari gently. And also because duty doesn't burp glitter on your shoes. Solari hiccuped. A faint shimmer of color burst from her mouth, briefly rearranging the atoms of Gregory's left sleeve into a plaid pattern. He blinked. Okay, not glitter, but definitely style-forward molecular disruption. Suddenly, the air changed. A vibration passed through the floor, precise, mechanical, cold. CAPRI-7's voice crackled in from a nearby panel. Security status. Breach imminent. External hull has been accessed using stealth fractal tunneling. Impact in 12 seconds. Aratha grabbed Gregory's arm. Hold tight. To what? But she didn't answer. The floor below them disassembled without warning, sections sliding apart in perfect synchrony, and the three of them dropped through a shaft lined with magnetic buffers. They fell without falling, momentum countered in pulses, landing softly in what looked like a cloaked shuttle hangar. This was not on the tour, Gregory said. Arath approached a sleek transport. Capri activated contingency route Theta 7. So we're fleeing. We're repositioning. There's a difference. In what universe? In this one, if we survive 5 more minutes. Gregory buckled into the co-pilot seat, holding Solari in a containment harness that doubled as a calming resonance cocoon. She babbled in approval. The ship rumbled as Arath activated launch sequences. From the corner of the hangar, a flicker, then a voice. Unregistered transport. Stand down. A shadow faction agent appeared, tall, gray-cloaked, with no visible face. Their voice was mechanical, scrubbed of inflection. Return the hybrid. The human is irrelevant. Hey, Gregory said. I am extremely relevant to at least one very sparkly baby. The figure stepped forward, raising a palm. A pulse of null energy filled the space, dimming every light. Solari whimpered. The room trembled. Then Gregory did something unexpected. He sang, badly. The lullaby that came out of his mouth was one he remembered from his sister's old recordings. Off-key, bizarrely paced, and full of nonsense lyrics involving pickles and stars. But it carried emotion, pure, clumsy, sincere. The room hesitated. Even the agent paused. Solari lit up like a solar flare wrapped in a giggle. The null field fractured. The shadow agent stumbled back, disoriented. Aratha launched the ship. As the hangar doors burst open and the stars stretched ahead, Gregory finished the last line of his ridiculous lullaby. I think, he said breathless, I just weaponized dad jokes. Aratha smiled. You're starting to understand. Solari reached for him again. The stars outside twisted into long threads of possibility, and behind them the galaxy prepared to argue over a joke, a bond, and a human whose lap had somehow become more powerful than 1,000 weapons. Gregory sat on the observation deck of the shimmering Maybe, which was not a warship, nor a diplomatic cruiser, nor even technically flight-approved. It was a retrofitted science yacht previously owned by an eccentric Glorconian who had believed love could be harvested from comets. The ship still occasionally tried to launch heart-shaped probes. No one had the heart to disable the feature. They'd been drifting for 5 days through uncharted resonance corridors, regions of space tuned to psionic harmonics rather than gravity. Solari had taken to them immediately, cooing in delight each time a ripple passed through her aura, causing Gregory's hair to stand on end and his thoughts to smell faintly of mango. Arath leaned against the console, eyes closed, ears twitching as she interpreted distant vibrations. She was calmer now, less armored. She'd even laughed once, when Gregory tripped over a maintenance drone named Hank. Hank held grudges. Solari was currently balanced on Gregory's shoulders, giggling as she subtly rearranged the molecular structure of his shirt into different styles every few seconds. He looked like a malfunctioning fashion show. Tell me again why we're waiting here, Gregory asked. Arathi opened one eye. Because this corridor bends around encoded gravitational signatures. If the shadow faction tries to follow, their logic engines will loop. So we're hiding in a place that breaks logic. Yes, I used to call that my apartment, she smirked. You've adapted well. I've been shot at, dimensionally sneezed on, hugged by a diplomat shaped like a pretzel, and psychically bound to a baby who can warp time during nap tantrums. I'd say I'm either adapting or dissociating creatively. Solari squealed, producing a brief time hiccup that reset Gregory's sentence mid-laugh. Creatively? They had a plan now, not a brilliant one, not the kind that made galactic history books, but a human plan, messy, emotional, and just rational enough to terrify everyone who preferred order. It began when the message came in. Capri 7's voice crackled through the speakers. Incoming secure communication from the conquered summit. Priority bewildered. The projection formed midair, a full assembly of the galactic conquered delegates, squinting, blinking, or wiggling nervously at the sight of Gregory in a half-paisley bathrobe holding a radiant child. Madrinth the Subtle spoke first. "Gregory Blaine, are you alive? More than ever. You've caused no fewer than 12 constitutional paradoxes. 3 member systems have declared interspecies empathy holidays. There's a new religion forming around a blurry image of you sneezing." Gregory considered it. Is the religion nice? They believe in kindness, naps, and over-communicating feelings. He shrugged. I've seen worse cults. A new face appeared. Counselor 4, leader of the Obscura-aligned Neutrality Coalition. She looked like a spire of obsidian glass with moving constellations inside her body. Her voice was deep and quiet, like the start of gravity. "You must return the child." "No," Gregory said. "And before you start with the logic, remember that logic failed you the moment a human lullaby disabled your operative's containment field." The room stirred. "I'm not special," he continued. "I'm a man who brings the wrong shoes to formal events and panics around authoritative elevators. But I held her when she cried, and she stopped. And that did something, not just to her, to me, maybe to all of you." Arath stepped into the frame. "We're not proposing rebellion. We're proposing relationship. The kind you can't chart with star maps or classify into species." Counselor 4 said nothing. Gregory set Solari down. She toddled forward toward the projection, walking now with slightly glowy feet, and placed her hand on the console. A wave pulsed out, soft, steady, vast. Delegates gasped. Some cried. One Trispecian began spontaneously composing an opera. Even 4 tilted, just slightly. "This is what you're afraid of?" Gregory said. "That something so small could change everything? She already has." Silence, then a sigh. Counselor 4 bowed her head. "Then let the change be real. But be warned, Gregory Blaine, if this path leads to fracture, then we patch it together with hugs and snacks," Gregory said. "I've got a diaper bag full of both." The projection faded. Gregory sat back, stunned. Did we just convince a galactic summit to stop being afraid of a baby?" "Yes," Arath said, "with jokes." "Well," he said, "when in doubt, confuse them into compassion." Weeks passed. The shimmering maybe returned not as fugitives, but as founders of the Intergalactic Resonance Accord. Gregory declined titles. He accepted hugs. He gave keynote speeches that mostly involved anecdotes about baby vomit and why interspecies trust starts with listening instead of scanning. Iratha stayed close. So did Solari. They weren't a family by blood or design, but something stronger had formed, woven through nights of starlight lullabies and unspoken fears shared in quiet looks. Gregory, once invisible at the summit's edge, had become something unexpected. Visible, vital, chosen. One evening, as the stars spun gently outside the deck, Solari curled into his lap, sighed, and fell asleep. And in the vast, tangled quiet of the universe, nothing cried. He ducked under the plasma baton, letting the beam scorch the air inches above his shoulder. The crowd roared, not because they understood the technique, but because humans bleeding on the mat made for good entertainment. Captain Eli Reese had learned that early in the interspecies exchange program. Alien delegates didn't cheer for finesse. They cheered for impact, velocity, and the occasional rib fracture. He spun, feinted left, then dropped into a sweep that sent his opponent, a reinforced mechanoid from Vega Delta, crashing down in a mess of sparks and bruised pride. Eli stood panting, blinking sweat from his eyes. Around him, the Velenth arena vibrated with war songs encoded in frequencies only readable if you had 3 eardrums or a very confused stomach. "Nice form," came a voice behind him, drier than a Martian gin martini. He turned and immediately regretted it. Illyra stood with her arms folded, weight shifted onto one long, angular leg. Her dark uniform hugged her frame with the tailored arrogance of royalty, and her ears, longer than his forearm and tipped in soft violet, twitched once, precisely. She didn't smile. She never smiled. I meant the part where you slipped and made it look intentional, she added. He nodded, expression grave. That was a feint within a feint. I call it the triple bluff stumble. Impressive. Did you study at the Academy of Improvised Footwear Defense? No, actually. Community college. Night classes. Her gaze lingered. Not cruelly, not even critically. Just lingering. Like she was trying to figure out what kind of creature would hurl themselves into a mechanoid's chest plate without a plan or a helmet. Did I pass your weird alien test? He asked, stretching his shoulder. I wasn't testing you. He hesitated. Oh, good. I was observing. Right. Definitely not creepy at all. She tilted her head slightly. We find your species fascinating. Fragile bone density, comically short lifespans, and yet you fight as though none of it matters. Some of us are just here to punch things and flirt with danger. And which one are you? He blinked. She stared. Then just as he opened his mouth to answer, she walked off without another word. By the time he limped back to the locker chamber, half injury, half swagger, his adrenaline was fading, replaced by that special kind of soreness that came from fighting something technically classified as small artillery. He sat on the bench, stripped off his chest plate, and began the delicate art of removing his sock from a foot that had turned a light, possibly fashionable shade of purple. The door hissed open. He didn't look up. If you've come to critique my sock removal form, I'll have you know I scored a 6.3 from the judges. Silence, then. I wish you were my husband. Eli froze. Very slowly, he looked up. Elira stood framed in the doorway, backlit by the corridor's sterile blue light. Her expression hadn't changed. Still that same neutral calm, like she just commented on the weather. Did I hit my head harder than I thought? No. Are you practicing Earth humor? No. Am I being blackmailed into a space wedding? She stepped forward. Among my people, such words are not spoken lightly. We do not flirt. We evaluate. You've been evaluated. He scrambled for his towel, his dignity, and possibly a trap door. I appreciate the, feedback. You are strong, brave, disobedient, mildly foolish. Thanks. And your symmetrical facial structure is statistically pleasing. Wow. My mom would be so proud. She always said I had a forehead for diplomacy. She tilted her head. Is that sarcasm? Mostly, also panic. She moved closer. Do you reject the proposal? I don't even know what the proposal is. To form a union, protection, loyalty, strategic cooperation, occasional rituals involving knives and fermented root paste. Okay, wow, just backing up a little. He stood up too fast, wobbled, then sat again with a wince. Look, Alara, you're great, and your ear architecture is stunning, but I don't know if I'm emotionally prepared for alien matrimony right after getting drop-kicked by a robot. She said nothing. Then, as if rerunning the moment for confirmation, she added, You are confused. That is acceptable. You are not expected to respond immediately. Great, I'll need a few decades, maybe a therapist. She turned, headed for the exit, and paused only to say, The offer stands until you die, which statistically is very soon. Then she was gone. Eli sat for a full minute, blinking at the door like it might apologize. Finally, he muttered, I should have taken that accounting job on Titan. Behind him, his locker beeped open, courtesy of a malfunctioning AI assistant named Marvin, who took things very literally. Engagement gift acquired, Marvin chirped cheerfully, ejecting a glowing Velanth blade from the locker with an enthusiastic hiss. Eli sighed. I haven't even said yes yet. The blade whispered, Accept her, fool. He threw his towel over it. He spent the next 72 hours avoiding her with the dedication of a man dodging jury duty. If Elira entered the training wing, he scheduled a nap. If she was in the mess hall, he suddenly developed an allergy to soup. And if her name appeared on the daily rotation log, he bribed a sleepy technician to swap it with a mildly drunk Martian corporal who thought every exercise was a game of capture the goat. It worked, almost, until the pairing schedule updated in red. Mission assignment, dual combat simulation. Captain Reese, Commander Elira. Underneath, in smaller font, all substitutions will result in disciplinary vaporization. Reese stared at the screen. Well, that's fair, Marvin chimed from his datapad. Would you like me to draft your will? I'm not going to die. Would you like me to adjust your will for irony? He grunted and shut the pad. By the time he arrived at the simulation dome, Alira was already there, examining a holographic projection of the terrain. Cliffs, neon jungle, and something that looked suspiciously like a lava river. You're late, she said without looking at him. Fashionably, or maybe I was giving you time to emotionally process your proposal. I processed it in 8 seconds. I'm not surprised. You probably process tax law for fun. She turned, expression unreadable as usual. What is tax law? Exactly. They were briefed by a holographic instructor with the personality of a traffic cone. Objective: retrieve the translocator beacon from the enemy base and return without dying. Difficulty level: high. Chance of survival: less than 50%, unless one or both participants had unresolved romantic tension. Then survival likelihood mysteriously increased by 17%. Reese raised a hand. Can I see the math on that last part? The instructor glitched. Error. Too human. The simulation loaded with a pulse of light, and suddenly they were knee-deep in foliage that glowed with the resentment of radioactive broccoli. The jungle hissed. The trees watched. Alira handed him a scanner. Try not to lick it this time, she said. That was one time, and it looked like a popsicle. They advanced, blades humming at their hips, suits sinking silently. Despite everything, the awkwardness, the cultural misfires, the looming marriage threat, Reese had to admit, she moved like poetry, angry poetry, possibly poetry written during a siege. They took out the first sentry, a spidery drone with far too many legs. With a coordinated leap and a synchronized energy pulse, it disintegrated mid-scream. Nice shot, he said. She didn't answer, but the tip of one long ear twitched. They reached the beacon outpost faster than predicted, mostly because Alira short-circuited the defense grid with a toothpick and a bored expression. Reese, meanwhile, discovered a mutant lizard that mimicked his voice and mocked him for 10 full minutes before he vaporized it out of sheer pettiness. As he reached for the beacon, the outpost shuddered. Did we trigger something? No, she said. They just know we're here. The cliff wall across the jungle cracked open like an eyelid. From the gap emerged a mech, a bipedal siege-class model, bristling with armaments, its pilot clearly compensating for something. Great, Reese muttered. You brought me on a first date to a war crime. Alira pulled him behind a wrecked column just as a laser scorched the earth where he'd been. You're handling this well. It's my thing, flirting through mortal peril. She peeked out and tossed him a glowing orb. Thermal displacer. Throw it at the knee joint. He nodded, spun out from cover, and hurled it with a perfect arc, only for the orb to bounce, roll, and detonate harmlessly against the mech's toe. The explosion made a noise like a fart at a funeral. Alira blinked. Did you miss? I didn't miss. I chose a suboptimal trajectory for dramatic flair. Understood. You are brave, but very bad at math. They regrouped under heavy fire. Alira configured her blade to long-range mode, essentially turning it into a hissing plasma whip. She coiled it once around the mech's arm, yanked hard, and screamed something in her native tongue that Reese didn't understand, but assumed was the Velenth word for, "You absolute bastard." Reese climbed onto a nearby ledge, leapt off it like a caffeinated squirrel, and landed on the mech's shoulder. "Hey, tin can!" he yelled, hammering the cockpit glass with the butt of his blade. "Pick on someone with shorter ears!" The pilot turned, furious. That was the distraction Alira needed. Her whip lashed around its leg, pulling it sideways. Reese slid off the shoulder and landed in a very undignified pile, groaning as the mech toppled into the lava river with a seismic splash. Silence. Then a low hiss as molten metal bubbled. "Did we just win?" he panted. "Yes," Alira said, "though your landing was questionable. Stylish. It's called a tactical sprawl." She held out a hand. He took it. Her grip was firm, warm. For a second they just stood there, surrounded by the smoking ruins of something that probably cost more than Earth's moon, watching each other. "I've revised your evaluation," she said. "Oh? You are 3% more husband material than yesterday." He grinned. "At this rate, I'll be proposal-worthy by the end of the fiscal year." Her eyes flicked upward. "You still have no idea what that means, do you?" "Not a clue." They teleported out just as the jungle began to collapse. Reese coughed up smoke, dusted off his singed armor, and muttered, "We make a weirdly effective team." Alara regarded him. "I have a theory about that." "Do I want to hear it?" "It involves synchronized danger pheromones and your ability to insult combat drones mid-fight." "I'm weirdly proud of that." Back in the debrief room, the instructor reappeared, flickering. "Summary. Combat successful. Team synergy high. Recommendation. Joint assignments continue." Reese glanced sideways. "You planning more dates like this?" Alara looked thoughtful. "Next time we attempt underwater infiltration with eels. I'm bringing a helmet and a lawyer." She almost smiled. Almost. The ship was alive. Not metaphorically, not poetically, actually alive. Reese had suspected as much when the walls sighed as he passed, or when the floor hummed beneath his boots in what he was starting to think was passive-aggressive disapproval. They boarded Alira's vessel, Veskai, a Velenth bioship bred rather than built, as part of a bonding exercise, which Reese assumed meant awkward cultural exchange involving fermented space root and potentially emotional trauma. He wasn't entirely wrong. The interior glowed faintly, like bioluminescent coral with mood swings. When he touched the wall, it pulsed softly beneath his fingers. "Do I need to ask for consent before I lean on anything here?" he asked. Alara glanced back. "She's temperamental. Best not to lean unless you're bleeding or apologizing." "Good to know." He withdrew his hand slowly. "I think she smelled my deodorant." "Probably. She's curious about foreign pheromones, especially ones that smell like synthetic citrus." They arrived at the central chamber, which looked vaguely like a cathedral designed by a jellyfish. The ceiling undulated. The table in the middle pulsed once, adjusted its height to match Reese's elbows, then emitted a low bloop. "I think it likes me," he said. "It's registering you as a guest. Don't eat anything it offers unless you want to see colors that haven't been invented yet. No promises." She sat opposite him, her expression as neutral as ever, except for the faintest twitch at the corner of her mouth. He was starting to recognize that as her version of a smirk, or indigestion. "I brought you here," she said, "because the council has started interpreting." Reese blinked. "Interpreting what?" "Our partnership, our proximity, your continued survival." "Oh, no." "Oh, yes." He slumped in his seat. "Let me guess. They think we're dating. Or mating. The Velenth language doesn't distinguish." "Delightful." He rubbed his face. "Just so we're clear, I haven't mated with anyone in at least 6 galactic quarters." "Unfortunate." He looked up sharply. "Was that? Did you just flirt with me?" "Number 1 evaluated your loneliness." "Wow, that's even worse." A soft chime interrupted them. The ship projected a series of holographic notifications above the table. Red glyphs pulsed in urgent rhythm. Alara's face darkened. "That's not standard traffic." "What kind is it?" "The kind that follows me through 5 systems and doesn't wave hello." The projection resolved into a formation of sleek black ships, unmarked, silent, predatory. Reese recognized them. Ghost-class interceptors, stealth vessels used for elite assassinations and plausibly deniable diplomacy. "Oh, good," he muttered. "I was worried things were getting boring." Alara stood. "Battle stations. I don't know where those are on a ship that has organs. Just follow the humming and don't touch anything that looks like it might scream." He followed her through a corridor that pulsed like a digestive tract. At one point, the floor grabbed his foot and gently redirected him. He decided not to panic. The bridge was less of a control room and more of a nervous system. Tendrils of light connected panels to what looked suspiciously like veins. Alara touched the console with both hands. The ship responded instantly, releasing a low growl and adjusting course. "They've been tracking me," she said, eyes scanning the feed. "Probably since the ceremony. They waited until I left orbit. Reese watched the ships close in. Your fan club. They're a faction, traditionalists. My house has enemies. And they don't approve of your totally platonic, non-romantic interactions with a very symmetrical Earthman. They don't approve of any deviation from control. I am a deviation. The first shot rocked the bioship. Reese stumbled, caught himself on a wall that smelled faintly of almonds, and asked, "You got weapons?" "Not standard ones, but Veskai is resourceful." Reese looked out the viewing membrane. "She better be." Without warning, the bioship shuddered, then unleashed a spray of spores into space, glowing particles that latched onto one of the interceptors and promptly made it hallucinate its own mortality. The ship spun wildly, then exploded into abstract expressionism. "Okay," Reese said. "That's cooler than nukes." The remaining ships closed in. Veskai dodged, bent in mid-space, curved itself like a serpent dodging arrows. Reese held onto a rail that was maybe a spine, maybe a pipe, and tried not to pass out. Illyra's voice stayed calm. "I need you to assist the defense cortex." "Which is where?" She pointed down a secondary corridor. "Left, then down the throat, past the memory vault. If you see the empathy organ, you've gone too far." "Empathy organ, got it." He ran. The throat was exactly as inviting as it sounded. The walls contracted around him just enough to make him regret everything. But at the end was a control cluster glowing with color-coded emotions. "Please identify," said a soft voice in his head. "Captain Eli Reese, reluctant defense participant and part-time snack. Authorization accepted. Deploying sarcasm interface." Suddenly, he could control the defense grid with his mood. It was powered by emotional intent, like some kind of interstellar mood ring with firepower. He focused on righteous indignation and immediately launched a barrage of kinetic pulses. "I am deeply offended by this attack," he bellowed, blasting 2 ships off course. "Targeting linked to passive-aggressive thoughts," the interface informed him. He grinned. "That I can do." As Reese fired weapons fueled by every awkward family dinner he'd ever endured, Illyra maneuvered the ship like a dancer, elegant, brutal, efficient. When the last interceptor disintegrated into a bloom of harmless debris, Reese staggered back to the bridge. He collapsed onto a growth that molded into a chair. "Good news," he gasped. "I weaponized my childhood." Illyra didn't look at him. "They won't stop." "Then maybe we should." "Should what?" "Stop pretending this is casual. You're being hunted. I'm now a moving target. And the only reason I'm not a pile of atoms is because you keep dragging me into increasingly poetic war zones." She turned. Her eyes shimmered slightly, just enough to be real. "I told you," she said. "You've been evaluated." He sighed. "Well, tell your people I'm flattered. But next time, maybe we try evaluating me with a quiet picnic. No assassins, no ship organs." She considered. "Unlikely, but I can promise better root paste." Reese closed his eyes. "Fine, but I'm picking the music." The formal diplomatic event was hosted on a floating citadel above a gas giant. With so many moons, the schedule had to be recalculated hourly. Reese was dressed in a ceremonial uniform that itched in 9 places and included a cape that actively tried to strangle him whenever he turned too fast. Illyra looked the same as she always did, regal, unreadable, and mildly dangerous. Her ears twitched once at the sight of the buffet, which Reese took as either excitement or suspicion toward the floating seafood. "We're only here to observe," she said. "Great. Observing is my specialty. I'm a professional wallflower." I minored in awkward nodding. "This is important. Appearances matter." "Don't worry, I appear incredibly confused. That's still an appearance." They mingled among alien officials with too many arms, too many eyes, or too much perfume. Reese tried to make small talk with a Zarnithian diplomat, only to discover that their species considered blinking to be a form of seduction. He excused himself, promising never to blink again, and retreated toward a refreshment orb that smelled like banana and possibly regret. Then everything exploded, not metaphorically, literally. The east wing of the citadel vanished in a bloom of energy and shrieking metal. Gravity wobbled. An alarm sang a deeply sarcastic tone. Guests scattered in all directions, except for the ones who began calmly drawing weapons, which raised immediate concerns about their interpretation of the phrase formal gathering. Reese instinctively dove behind a collapsed column, dragging Alira with him. "Please tell me this is another one of your cultural ritual," he said. This is an assassination attempt." "Of course it is. I was overdue for one." She scanned the chaos. "They're targeting me. Again. You're just very popular in a deeply hostile way." He peeked out and saw a squad of black-clad figures in adaptive armor, moving with eerie precision. One of them spotted him and opened fire with a concussive pulse rifle. The blast vaporized the refreshment orb. "I didn't even get to try the banana shame flavor," Reese muttered. They moved fast, Alira slicing through enemies like she was composing an angry ballet, Reese using debris for cover and hurling projectiles with desperate creativity. At one point, he threw a serving tray with such velocity it embedded into a wall. He wasn't proud, but he was alive. They found a corridor sealed by emergency protocols. Alira placed her palm on the panel. The door refused. "Denied," it said. "Security override required." Reese stepped up, cracked his knuckles, and stared at it. "I once hacked a vending machine in military school," he said, "using only a spoon and my terrible GPA. That explains much." He jammed a control node, sparked a circuit, and rerouted power through a nearby light fixture. The door sighed and opened. Never doubt the power of snack motivation. They emerged into a secondary passage. Alira's blade flickered. "They're using cloaking." "How do you know?" "I can smell them." Reese blinked. "Okay, that's both terrifying and kind of hot. Focus." They moved in silence. Then one of the cloaked figures lunged from above. Alira intercepted the strike, parrying with such force that the attacker was thrown into a wall hard enough to leave a dent. Reese turned. Another figure appeared, this one wearing a mask shaped like a Velen sigil. He hesitated. "I know that emblem," Alira said. "That's House Triskar." "I thought they were extinct." "They were, until now." They were interrupted by a voice, mechanical, filtered, malevolent. "You have strayed, Alira. The bloodline does not forgive." The masked figure removed their helmet. Beneath was a face similar to hers. Same ears, same sharp features, but colder, crueler. "Brother," she said. Reese's brain stuttered. "I'm sorry, you have a secret royal brother assassin? He was exiled." "You really should have led with that at some point." "He wasn't important." The brother, Vial, stepped forward. "You shame our lineage with your attachments. You offer yourself to a human, a species that can't even survive its own television." Reese raised a finger. "We're getting better. We made peace with Canada last year. You bring weakness to our house. I bring change. You bring infestation." Reese cleared his throat. "Hi, yes. Still here. Very infesty." Vael unsheathed twin energy daggers. "Step aside, hybrid lover." Reese frowned. "Do I get a cooler title if I survive this?" Alira moved first. Their blades met with a shockwave that rattled the corridor. Reese backed away, then ducked as Vael's second-in-command attacked from the side. He fought dirty, mostly because he had no other style. He threw a ceremonial pot, kicked a support beam, and improvised a weapon from a dessert skewer. By the time he joined Alira again, she was bleeding from a shallow cut across her temple. Vael was limping. "This ends now," she said. "No," Vael snarled. "It begins." He triggered a pulse from his gauntlet. A beacon flared. "Reinforcements inbound," Alira said. Reese sighed. "Why do they always come in waves? Can't we just have one dramatic duel and call it a day?" "We need to escape. Now." They ran. Emergency protocols guided them toward the Citadel's outer ring, where evacuation pods were waiting. Reese helped Alira into one, then dove in as Vael fired a parting shot that grazed his side. The pod launched. The Citadel shrank behind them, scarred, burning, still spinning above the gas giant like a wounded sentinel. Inside the pod, Reese clutched his ribs. "Okay, south. You've got assassins, family drama, and a house war on your heels, and you still want to marry me?" Alira looked at him, eyes blazing. "I didn't say it would be safe. I said you were evaluated." He groaned. "Just once, I'd like to date someone who doesn't come with a death toll." "You're welcome to decline." He winced, then grinned. And miss all this? Not a chance. The pod crash-landed on a desert moon that wasn't supposed to exist, according to every navigation chart Reese had ever seen, which meant it was either newly formed, cleverly hidden, or so catastrophically boring that the galaxy collectively agreed to forget it. Either way, they were alive. Mostly. I think my spleen moved 3 inches to the left, Reese groaned, crawling out of the wreckage. Then your symmetry is ruined, Elira said, standing without a scratch and brushing sand off her armor. Great. Now I'm only 94% husband material. They set up a temporary beacon while the bioship Veskai rerouted to their location. The moon had breathable air, edible flora that tasted like burnt celery, and hostile wildlife shaped like origami nightmares. It was, in short, a perfect romantic getaway. If your idea of romance involved paranoia and a mild risk of impalement. While scavenging for supplies, Reese stepped on a creature that hissed in binary and threatened legal action. He apologized profusely and offered it a protein bar, which it accepted before scuttling off to probably file a lawsuit. Back at camp, Elira was assembling a defense perimeter from what looked like spare pod panels, and what Reese sincerely hoped wasn't part of the toilet. You're very calm for someone whose estranged royal brother just tried to kill her, he said. It's not the first time. Do all your family reunions end in attempted assassination? Number once we tried karaoke. That sounds worse. She sat beside him, finally letting herself breathe. For the first time since they met, Reese noticed the tension in her shoulders. Not battle readiness, but fatigue. The kind that came from being hunted, judged, and perpetually disappointed by your own bloodline. He hesitated, then reached out and took her hand. She didn't flinch. You ever think, he said, that maybe the whole system you were born into is completely bananas? Yes, she said, every day. Then maybe it's time to build something new, something not dictated by bloodlines or battle scores or ear symmetry. She looked at him. You? Us. Weird space couple. Zero traditions. Occasional sarcasm. Maybe a dog. We don't have dogs. We can make one out of nanobots. She smiled, actually smiled. It would turn feral in 5 minutes. I'd still feed it. That's growth. Before she could answer, the sky above them rippled. Veskai arrived, sleek, humming, vaguely smug. It opened its hull and deployed a boarding ramp made of something that glittered like liquid moonlight. Inside, the command chamber pulsed with anticipation. Elira interfaced with the ship's neural core. Reese handed her a snack. Fuel, he said. Bribery, she replied, accepting it. Affection, he corrected, wrapped in sugar. Then the console blinked. A message. Intercepted transmission. From Vale. I am coming. Elira stared at the message. He won't stop. Then we don't run. You're proposing confrontation? I'm proposing a very loud message, with explosives and feelings. They plotted a course straight into the heart of House Triskar territory. The bioship prepared itself, charging its emotional weapon systems, syncing its hull defenses with Reese's heartbeat, and humming a war song in F minor. Vael's fleet met them above the black sun of Draelos Prime. 40 ships, cloaked, curved, cruel. Reese adjusted his collar. We faced worse. We haven't. Right. Just trying to build morale. Elira led the charge. Veskai darted between enemy lines, deploying illusions and sonic dissonance fields that made enemy pilots question their careers, life choices, and whether or not they'd left the oven on back home. Reese controlled auxiliary systems through his now semi-sentient console, which had developed a voice. You're pressing that wrong, it said. It's a button. You still pressed it wrong. Together, they pushed through the blockade. At the center was Vael's command ship, bristling with dark energy. Elira opened a channel. Stand down. You carry rot, Vael spat. Your union will poison the bloodline. Reese leaned into view. Hi. Just wanted to say I'm flattered. Also, you look like someone tried to make a villain out of dry ice and daddy issues. Val cut the signal. They prepared for the final assault. Reese turned to Elira. Whatever happens next, I'm with you. She nodded. You always were. Veskai plunged forward, firing a burst of concentrated memory fragments. weaponized echoes of Illyra's childhood, her losses, her victories. The enemy ship staggered. Reese activated the empathy organ, flooding Vale's systems with emotional overload. Vale screamed, his ship fractured. They watched as the flagship imploded into a ripple of silence. It was over. Back aboard Veskai, the ship calmed. The stars outside drifted like exhaled breath. Reese sat down, tired beyond comprehension. So, what now? Illyra joined him. Now I return. Not as heir, as challenger. And me? You're my union partner. Is that your people's term for husband? Number. It's more than that. You're the one I chose. He stared at her for a long moment. You realize I'm going to make terrible jokes at all of your coronation ceremonies. I expect it. And I'm probably going to embarrass you in front of other high-ranking officials. That's already happened. Then I guess this is happening. She leaned closer. It already has. They didn't kiss. That wasn't their thing. Instead, they touched foreheads, an ancient Velenth gesture that translated loosely to "I trust you not to stab me in my sleep," which from Illyra was deeply romantic. Reese looked out at the stars. He'd started this mission as a lone human soldier, trying not to die in front of aliens. Now he was bound to one of them, by loyalty, by battle, by affection forged in fire and idiocy. He sighed. I hope the nanobot dog doesn't shed.